First, I work for Antea Group. Have you ever heard about our company? Somebody? No? Well, perhaps you're going to meet us today then. We're one of the biggest engineering firms in the Netherlands. We have 2,000 people working for us. And the whole spectrum of engineering, from infrastructural to waterworks to the living environment, building environment, architects, landscape architects, everybody is working in our firm. So I was looking at all the master tracks that you got. I saw that for everybody we got something to do within our company, and we also work together. So that is quite nice to do. We do that not only in the Netherlands, we do it all over the world. We have offices all over the world, and like I said, in the Netherlands we work with more or less of 2,000 people. Me, myself, I'm working in Rotterdam. I live in Utrecht. I also choose it in a kind of strategical way because our projects are not located just around your office. It could be anywhere. Also, the projects of which I'm going to talk about today, it's literally in the middle of nowhere on the Veluwe. In my first year, I had to travel there by public transport, which was a way of 1.5 hours by train, then 1 hour by bus, and the last 30 minutes I had to walk. So this can happen, but if you love to do your projects, well, you can get anywhere. We also have in Eindhoven, since 10 years, I think, a small hub. We can work with 20 people here. But most of the biggest offices, we work with 200, 300 people. And they're all over the Netherlands. And I thought maybe you know a few of our projects. Have you ever heard about Tialf, the ice skating ring? There used to be no roof on it. And my colleagues proposed to make it, well, an indoor skating ring. It is already 30 years ago. It was actually the second one in the world. The first one without construction beams in the middle. So you can look all over the ice skating ring. Another project that was just finished last week, the Dom Tower, the restoration. We also are first supplier of het Nationale Park de Hoge Veluwe. Have you ever been there? It's close to the pavilion that I'm going to talk about. This is the park pavilion, designed by the Zwarte Hond. And at the opposite, yes, there's a small building. It's a bike repair shop, and it's mine. I used to study here, and I studied architecture. I changed to a project manager, but even once in a while, I can even design something. And in my first year, I still remember that there was also an architect here teaching every student, also me, something about architecture. And the only project he did in his life was also a bike repair shop. It was in Helmond. It's still some there or not? Do they teach about it? No? But this was mine. I'm also working on a project Stripe S here in Eindhoven. We're going to change it completely. I work together with Venhoeven CS on this, and I'm going to talk about the pavilion, on which, well, this is the theme of this lecture. I'm a project manager, and I was the project manager of this project. Does somebody of you know what it means? What you do as a project manager? Nobody? Well, you try to manage a project. And and actually, I had to learn this for one of the courses here, project management. Even when you did architecture, you had to do project management. And these 6 letters are kind of magic for structuring projects and also managing projects. It's a small formula, but if you have a problem to fix, if you have to organize a project, think about these 6 letters. The first one, it's in Dutch, groot-ik. I don't know if there is abbreviation in English, but this was the one I learned here, or GoKit. There are a few ways to order the letters. But the first thing is that you have to think about money. Every project costs money, and that fluctuates. It's a dynamic. It's always dynamic project. The second one are risks. The third one is the organization. You have to think about time planning, but also how to yeah, how are you going to deal with information? And even drawings are already information, and how are you going to overlay it with all the disciplines that are working in the project? And in the end, you have the quality. Well, I was thinking for today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project in a more architectural way, but also sometimes take a moment to reflect on these aspects and the things that I did not know before, because this was actually one of my first projects, and I did it from A to Z, from the beginning until the end. And sometimes you need to bluff. People believed me that I really could manage that project, and I didn't believe myself, because yeah, I graduated here. There were a lot of clients, generals, even ministers within it projects that were my clients, and they all believed me that I could finish this. And well, I just saw what I just tried to do my best, and in the end it worked out. But speaking about my clients, who of you have already been in Luna? Nobody? If you are a victim of war, you have our state, the Netherlands, if you're a Dutch citizen, will provide for you a grave for eternity. So we have an organization, it's called Oorlogsgravenstichting. It's a foundation who takes care about these graves. But there was also a wish between the veterans, people who actually survived the war, but wanted to be together with their comrades, the veterans. They wanted to have a place to be buried together. And they were looking in the Netherlands, where could we realize this? And we have in Luna, so it's on the Veluwe, we have a place where war victims is the biggest, the national cemetery for war victims. They said, well, perhaps we can do it here. And this was actually the question that came to our company, Antea Group. Can you help us to realize a war cemetery? And we said, okay, of course we can. And they said, Maarten, you're going to do it? And I said, of course I can. But I didn't know how it was going to end. But the results are there now. So on the one hand, we have the Oorlogsgravenstichting. And they are like, let's say, a garden foundation, because they only have to keep the graves in a nice and a perfect order. But when you become a veteran and you die, you don't have the right for a grave that the state pays for you. So we needed to make a new foundation that is actually the same as every company that buries people on cemeteries. And they have different ways of thinking, but they have also different regulations to keep in mind. Because the Oorlogsgravenstichting, they are non-profit. They can take care of the graves for war victims, but the association that we started, you pay for 20 years for a grave, and then you have to pay an extra 20 years, or you don't, and your grave will be, how do you call it in English? Well, your bones will be taken out of the ground and put in one big pile, but these are also two different organizations who think in a different way and also need to follow different rules. And this is one that I didn't know, because when you have money that is founded by the state, public money, you have to follow the European guidelines to select, for example, architects or contractors. If you do it with your own money, so you're a profit organization, you can do whatever you want. I can buy whichever television I want. But that's not the case when I have money that came from the state. Then I have to ask a few parties, how much does it cost, your television, or in this case, your building? Or how does it look like, and how much will it cost for an architect to make it? I didn't know. But with who did I work together? I worked together with architects, Kaan architects. They were the building architect. We also have a landscape here. That was Karres and Brands. Tinker, they made an exhibition within the pavilion. And I worked together with engineers. Well, they are mentioned here as well, contractors, and you work together with your clients and your sponsors. and they are, well, mentioned on this one. And within my company, I also worked with a team of 60 people. And I had to manage this. Everybody needed to do their task at the right moment. Now, which tasks are there? I will go later on in detail on it, but I will tell you now a little bit about the cemetery. This is the Veluwe in 2010. And this is also the Ereveld, at Ereveld. And you don't see it quite good at this moment, but there's the old part. It's within the dotted lines. There are 4,000 people already buried over there, and that's the maximum they can. So they had to expand. We don't have a lot of war victims at that moment, but it could happen. And if it happens, you already want a place for people ready, and it's a little bit of, it's not a strange feeling to work on a project like this. You build graves for somebody who is going to die, but you really don't want them to die in this way. But anyway, we asked Karres and Brands architects to make a plan, and the first plan was made by Haspels. And if you look at the environment, you have a forest, and within the forest there is a difference in the density of the forest. So you have a really dense forest in which you almost see nothing except trees, and the other one, in the old part, there's a lot of space between the trees, so you can look everywhere. And they made a design with a cross in the middle, and Karres and Brands, they needed to find a solution to make an extension. And they thought about a few different plans. They thought about one, to actually go, it's in the right top, to continue within the structure of the old plan. It's a kind of organic way, organic roads, and they extended one of the sidelines. But they also tried different variation, and in the end, they thought, well, we're going to make, within the forest, the dense forest, we're going to cut the trees in shapes of ovals, and they will form like a chamber within the forest. And we're going to give every chamber a different identity. But yeah, how far do you go? How many graves do we already need to be there? Are we going to build already the whole place in the wood, in the forest, or are we going to start with a few at first? And that's what I did. So before I started, phase 1 was already done. 2 of the chambers were already realized. One of them, it's like an arena. Can you see it? Yeah, perhaps it doesn't really look like it, but the middle is really 2 meters deeper than on the edges. And after 3 months of completion, this was already flooded because there was a once in a lifetime rainfall over there. But yeah, it was a good test. Perhaps due to the statistics say that it will never happen again. But we know now what happens if it rains quite heavy. The other one that is made is called the Randkamer. They made a border, which is quite visible here, but also quite visible if you are there. And so they have, for every chamber they make within the forest, they have their own identity. And one of those chambers they wanted to give to the veterans. And this actually is the scope of my project. It's number B. It was already cut, but wasn't really already built. And to make this work, we also needed a new entrance, because a war victim, well, in the past, they are still everywhere on the world. They are replaced to the cemetery here. But yeah, even once in a while, actually every month, 2 or 3 people die now, veterans, and they wanted to be buried here. So we needed to make a new, let's say, professional cemetery with also a building where you can hold ceremonies. So the first part of the scope was a new entrance. Then we had the cemetery itself, and we made a pavilion where all the ceremonies could take place. But if you do it every month, only once or twice, and you build a whole building for it, that's not enough to make it profitable. It doesn't need to be profitable, but what they also did with it, and this is the second destination for the second use for this building, it's not only for the ceremonies, but it's also for education. And this lecture would have been way nicer if we would have done it there. Perhaps we can organize it with GEOPS in the future. Yeah, that's actually the main use for the building. Yeah, so I started here as an architectural student, and I learned about architecture, even a little bit about urban design. But in reality, outdoors, there's always a context. You have to deal with people, but you also have to deal with factors in the environment. I learned a little bit about buildings, but I didn't really learn about how landscape was designed or even engineered. But in this case, the cemetery was part of the whole project, so I needed to say something about it. I needed to get everybody together to do their thing. Also, within the pavilion, I already told you that there was something about education. Well, there's an exhibition, and I also needed to organize a design, but also I had to take care that it was well integrated into the pavilion. So it was there, and like I said, the client, the real client is the Minister of Defense, which also came to visit even once in a while the project. I had to deal with generals, all high-placed people. It was just a small building, but everybody had their opinion. And it made it really special, especially for me who did this for the first time. But if you have a little bit of enthusiasm, well, you will get pretty far. So I will tell you something about the cemetery, and now this is more a story for the architects, landscape architects. Like I said, every of those chambers had their own identity. And the chamber for the veterans, they wanted to make a plateau. It's like a platter, and on the side of the platter you have a rim. And that's what I tried to make here, and there's quite, well, the height difference is quite big here on this place. So what they tried to do is to make a plateau in the beginning. They put it on the angle, made the rim, a border on the outside, and then, not to displace too much ground, they tried to make an artificial hill, but the paths are still on the angle of the platter. And this is how it was, yeah, how the plateau was made. The pavement, they thought that it would be nice if the ground would, the grass would go from one side to the other and between all the tiles that were placed. Actually, if you try to take somebody who died in a coffin rolling on this path, that doesn't really work. So we had to change it in the end to something that was more solid than this. But this was the idea for the pavements, and they also wanted to make within this platter a few places where they put trees. So the big space was not conceived as one really big platter, but yeah, a little bit divided with trees. So the end result in the render looked like this. Something I didn't realize is that when you want to have a tree, and we all know it, but because before it's really grown, it takes 40, 50 years. But the same goes with the grass and all the vegetation that you have there. It looks nice in a render, but actually when you visit it here, it will still take 10 years before it's finally in the shape and in the way it should look like the architects really wanted. One of the problems of it, which I also didn't learn here, is that it has something to do with how many nutrients are in the ground. They want to have heide. It's a type that we have here, a vegetation that doesn't like really nutrients. But there are a lot here. So what they did is they made a few phases. Now they have a vegetation that takes out all the nutrients from the soil. Within a few years, they remove it. And then the vegetation that is aimed to be there is going to be sown, and it will look differently. If you look like it now, it looks a little bit like this. And it's all about the money. And there's always a debate between how it should look like. That's what the architects, they want everything perfect and according to their concepts. And I can understand it, but sometimes things get expensive. For example, in the middle of the cemetery, there is, it's a sitting element, I called it. I don't know the real English word for it, but you can sit over here. And they wanted to build it, and they made an estimation for how much it would cost. It was 22,000 euros. And then I went to the contractor and I asked him, can you make it for me? And he said, yes, of course. He said, it's going to cost you 100,000 euros. And then I thought, whoa, just for that? And then I went to another one, and he wanted to do it for 73,000, or 76,000. And I still thought, whoa, this is a lot of money. But yeah, the architects really wanted it, and then you're going to have a debate, how are we going to get it within budget? And there was a solution. Because the architect wanted to have, and if you look really close at it, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it looks like one element. It should be put in concrete there. And then all those wooden beams here, they have different widths. So if you change it in this case 4 elements, and if you make all the same dimensions of the wood, it will cost you only 24,000 euros. It's still a lot of money, but it's there now. You can sit on it, but this is one of the things you encounter. You try to keep all, in my case, I need to keep the project on budget. And these things are surprises. The same goes with the elements that I thought to make here. There are 3 entrances together, 150,000 euros. We changed it into this one. And for 15,000 euros, we found an alternative. Then the pavilion. The pavilion is located between the chamber and the north, I think. Yeah, in the north. It's the one that looks like an arena. That's where war victims will be buried in the future. And in the south, the veterans. And Khan architects had to think about how am I going to place an element here, and how is it going to look like? So what they thought is, if you really look at the environment, there are a lot of trees within the forest, and if we put down a horizontal element, it will give a contrast over there, and some nice, interesting views. And they thought about the organization. Actually, it's the first time I understood a concept. I used to study here 10 years, like I said, and I heard a lot of concepts, but this one was actually quite easy for me to understand, because what they said, we're going to create 3 different types of rooms and 3 different types of experiences. So we have one where you are, if you look at a ceremony, for example, when you're with your family, you want to feel within the forest. So that's the first one. And what they create there, doorzicht, you can look through the building if you are there. But if you are on the inside, now we can look on one side to the how is it called here? Koeveld, to the center here. But if we would have created it one at the other as well, it will feel like you're in a train and you're within the environment. It's what they tried to create there as well. The second one has a little bit more use for the exhibition. If you have an exhibition, you really would like to focus on the exhibition, not on the surroundings. So they kept it as a closed space with only a roof light. And the last one is when you have your, now, but then somebody is dead next to me. and you give a presentation, you can focus on me, but it would be nicer to focus on where you are. And they created, well, perhaps you remember it. If you look at the train, there's a big cross in the middle on the old part. And it's deadly in the center if you are sitting in the last space and you look right to it. And this was the concept, and they put it together. And that actually gave the structure of the building. And these spaces were like sandwiched within two concrete platters. And they made it, yeah, quite nice. This is the, you don't see it really clear here, I think. But the cross is over there. It's in the center of this space. This is where you look outside. And usually the coffin is here. It's placed over there. Then you have the room for the family, where you can look through the building. And the one, and perhaps some of you recognize who this guy is. This is where the exhibition is. But this is our king. He came to open the pavilion. Like I said, there are some important people that I had to respond to. But how do you make this, and how do you keep everybody in at the same track? When I studied here, I'm not sure if it's still there, but it was called Architecture, Building and Planning. Is there still some planning that has been done here? Yes, no? Everything at the last moment? Just before the presentation? No sleeping? Yeah. Well, luckily, this is one of the things that I'm happy that I did here, because real life is way easier. You can sleep. Yeah. Even when you're an architect. But I will come to that later. One of the things that I didn't really learn here are installations. Do they teach about it? Mechanical installation, electrical installations? Because they take, well, a part of your budget, more or less 30–40%, but also a lot of space within buildings. It's well integrated here in this building, but yeah, you can design it, and it looks like it's designed over here, but there are a lot of buildings, if you look around you, where everything is just, well, perhaps they're on the side. There are installations, and it looks a little bit, here you can do it because it looks a little bit industrial, but in some places you really don't want your fire safety just attached to the wall like this. It could be placed also really nicely and be well designed. But I didn't really learn it. But Ghana architects, they did it quite well. If you are there, everything is well designed. From the ventilation that you see here in the floor, you don't see a lot anymore when you are there, but it heats up the building. It takes care of the air treatment. Also the lights, it's all well designed on the right place. And then the process. I only learned to design over here, but there's way more to it. Because before you can even start to design, you need to select architects. And like I said in the beginning, if you have a client which uses money that is public money, you need to have a tender in which you have to select a team or an architect that is going to make your design. It takes half a year if it's a big project, just to select. And when you're an architect, you have to compete within that tender. And usually you have to do it for free. And if you win it, well, perhaps you get paid afterwards. In this case, I don't like to pay architects. No. I gave them even 10,000 euros to make a design in the beginning, which looks a lot, but I will come to that later. It's not. But so you have your design, but before you can build, in the construction phase, you need to select a contractor again. And you also need a permit. And before you have your permit, you need to do some research within the environment. For me, these were the four elements within the project that I needed to keep on track with each other. So you have the terrain, the cemetery, then you have the building, but there needs to also be interior in it, and there needs to be there needed to be an exhibition. And if one of them had a delay, I had to take care that the rest was going with it. So nobody taught me anything about permits. Do they do now? Actually, before you can even build, you have to look really well at the environment. My colleagues are archaeologists, for example, or ecologists, and they all needed to go there, and I was praying, don't find anything. Because if they find a place where the archaeologists, for example, where somebody lived before, they need to document it, and then you have a delay. But also the ecologists found this guy. I thought it was a snake, but we call it a hazelworm here. But because of this guy, we needed to put the pavilion a little bit to another place, because he was living there. And you don't spot this guy. There are some plants where he likes to sleep, and those are an indication where you should not build, keep away from. Risks as well. This was actually quite fun project, because there were two things happening. I wanted to have my permit, and I asked, well, I went to the municipality, and the last moment that it would be definitive was in May 2019. And 1 week before, the nitrogen legislation here in Holland was cancelled. So the whole project was put on hold. We had to think about ways not to have too much nitrogen emissions here, which we eventually succeeded, but we have to think about, well, we were the first ones almost in the Netherlands. It was quite nice to think about it, but it cost us half a year. The second one was COVID. If you look at the facade of the building, it's marble, and it came from Spain. Well, those guys didn't work for 4 months. The installations came from Poland. They also didn't work, but not at the same time, but 4 months later. So this was actually, quite let's say a puzzle to fix. But in the end, the total delay was only 8 months, and I stayed within budget. So actually, that was quite nice. Well, I talked already a little bit about tenders. Then costs, money. The total project costs were 6.2 million, and just for the pavilion, only the construction, not the design, we had 2.2 million. And we thought that design and engineering would take 1,000 hours to make. This is an estimation in front. How? If you give this budget to architects, I gave them 1.4 million to design, and in the end, there's always a different. Every project is going without its boundaries. In the end, it costed 2.2 million. But how much do you think, if you work as an architect, 1,000 hours, how much do you think it will cost us? My hourly rate is more or less the same. How much do you think that I cost if I work 1 hour for you guys? 40 euros. Who bids more? Excluding tax. €150 per hour. And this is only what I cost within my company. If I sell myself to a client, it's between 150 and 200 euros per hour. That's what you will cost in the future. And if you work 1,000 hours, it's more or less half a semester. It will mean that your value here that you produce is 150K. The architects gave me an offer They cost 450 euros per hour. The boss of an architectural firm. These budgets were not in my mind when I was studying here. I also thought 40 euros, and that was actually quite a lot. This is what every year when I work, clients pay for me 300,000 euros, and I don't get it at all. It goes to my boss for a big part, but yeah, this is what it costs. Well, then I want to finish this presentation because I told a little bit about the design, a little bit about the construction phase, for example. You try to make the most clearest drawings ever, and you calculate everything, but there are still some experimental things. They wanted to create a sandwich of spaces between two concrete plates, and this is what we needed to do. But before to do it, yeah, there were a lot of experiments outside to make it look like like one solid plate on the top and on the bottom. And after 10 of these experiments, we felt, that we could do it. And in the end, we made, it was just one pour. 20 of those trucks came and they poured their concrete. And in the end, when we took out the concrete, there were a lot of problems. The dakrand. What is the dakrand in English? Somebody? No? Well, the concrete plate has two functions. You have the one that's the roof, and you have a little bit it's a little bit higher, so you can put your installations behind it, for example. That part needed to be poured as well. So what we tried is to look at the interval. If we did it for the first part in the first 2 hours, and then we waited 2 hours to harden, then we could pour the rest on top of it, and it looked like one solid plate. But we poured this at 3 o'clock in the morning, the first one, and the second one we did at 8 o'clock. The difference in temperature was 20 degrees. So in the end, if you look really good at the pavilion, you will see that there are 2 layers of pouring. But if you make photos from a distance, it all looks great. So I would really like to invite you to come and have a look. Perhaps we can organize it and I can point out all the details that didn't work out. And there are quite a few. We have a lot of problems with the stone on the facade. But it's quite an experience to be there. And he was also there, and I could, our king. I also appreciate this audience even more than him. I just had 2 minutes with him. This is a little bit nicer. So if you want to know more about it, you can contact me. And I think my time is up, or not? Yes?
Yes, thank you very much for your lecture. You can scan your My Future Points upstairs at the